What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bling Talks presented by JewelryBox.ai. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Justin Smith, the founder of Hourglass Diamonds. He's the third generation jeweler with a visionary founder of Hourglass Diamonds. He's got a family history rooted in diamond mining operations dating back to the 1950s. Justin has transformed the family heritage into a modern custom design business based in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's a graduate of GIA and he brings a wealth of experience and expertise to the jewelry craft. Thank you so much for being on here. I appreciate it, man. I can't wait to get to know you better and learn more about your story and take some insights in for myself and the community. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Very much appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. So obviously, you've been around the business for quite some time. You've had a lot of experience. You've obviously built something really nice here with Hourglass Diamonds. Kind of just tell us who you are, where people can find you, and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a graduate gemologist. As Anthony said, I'm the owner founder of Hourglass Diamonds in Charlotte, North Carolina. You can find us at hourglassdiamonds.com, or you can check us out on Instagram. We have at Hourglass Diamonds on Instagram. Phone numbers on the website. You can call, text, email, ask questions, anything you want to do there. As far as what we do, specialize in custom. Don't let the name fool you. As far as Hourglass Diamonds is concerned, yes, we do specialize in diamonds. But we also have, some of the absolute best color gemstone cutters at our disposal as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, we can obviously get into that. As far as kind of who I am and where I start, my story actually starts back, even a bit before my time, but it's a bit of an interesting one. So I'm third generation. My grandparents actually uprooted from Wisconsin and moved into the Rupununi in the mid-1950s to mine for diamonds, which is basically Southwest Guyana, British Guiana, bordering on the Brazilian rainforest. They mined, into the 60s before a lot of political issues kind of drove them out. But ultimately, that kind of started the story to get to their opening a store here in Charlotte in the early 80s. I actually grew up around the industry, of course, obviously with them having a business. So, fun story there. I actually swallowed a ruby when I was 2.5 and was kind of kicked out for a period of time there. Yeah. First lesson in humility was getting that one back.
I swallowed a quarter once. And
well, it's funny too, even in our business. Yeah, I say, the vast majority of everything we do can fit on the head of a quarter. So we have to be pretty precise about detail, which is kind of fun. But I actually decided to go the executive chef sommelier route for about 15 years before, I got tired of working 110-hour weeks. Which oddly enough, transitioning from a sommelier into the jewelry industry isn't as much of a stretch as you might think. Part of it's all about hospitality. But the second piece of that was a lot of the same clients that I had in wine actually ended up being a lot of my clients in the diamond side. It's more the affluent culture anyway. So was an easy transition for me, which was great. I worked for my family's company for about a decade, ended up being in charge of we had a fully equipped diamond lab as well as, oversaw repairs, the sales team, managed a book of business on top of that. And then I was in charge of quality control, diamond and gemstone purchasing, et cetera. I ended up leaving there for quite a few reasons, but it ended up being really, really good for me because that was the catalyst for me to jump into the global spectrum, which, those were more along the roots of kind of how that business was originally founded and started, which also gave me a bird's eye view into the industry. I was talking with growers for lab diamonds to gain insight there, cutters in India, Australia, Hong Kong, Canada, South Africa, and then, of course, talking with thousands of retailers both here in the U.S. as well as abroad. In some of those cases, I was to, Melanie Casey, Rare Carat, Brilliance, India More Friendly, Dreamstone. So a lot of the big companies that people have come in contact with or heard of. And then, of course, a host of single and chain stores from here to Australia. So, it gave me this massive insight into the market, where people were buying from, what type of manufacturing quality they had, where were their manufacturing? Was it here in the States? Was it overseas? Going to the businesses here in the US, we had a ton of people that were, in that old school mentality, stores that were doing things that they've always done. They didn't want to embrace any new change because, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And then all the way up to some of the newer school that are playing with very high tech solutions, and almost a stark contrast, almost a clinical approach to sales, where you lose some of what makes this part of the industry so amazing. So, I ended up consulting for some of the stores there as well. But the big takeaway for me, kind of getting from that side to where I am now, I really miss dealing with clients, and in my area, there aren't a ton of stores that use like asset imaging, ideal scope, in conjunction with proprietary AI software that, a company that I consulted with developed. We can get into that later, but, cut grade software, and, well, I should say as a caveat to that, there's no substitute for the human eyeball. So even now I refuse to buy anything blind. But that's just how we kind of start our initial search. Part of me is old school in that respect. I know a lot of stores sell blind, but if I'm putting my stamp of approval on something, I'm going to do that with eyes on the diamonds personally. And I typically tell my clients two things really. The first one is if I get you 99% of what you wanted within reason, I've failed. You can't get a 4-carat diamond for $50. That's not feasible. But within reason, you should never have to settle. The second thing there is that diamonds really have one job, and that's to sparkle, period, full stop. So if your diamond's not a gorgeous make, then why even bother? So the third piece of that's kind of our unofficial slogan for Hourglass Diamonds, but a cornerstone for our business, which is really ethics before quality, before profits every single time. So those three things, striving for perfection with our clients, the quality of our product and designs, and our ethics. That's kind of what sets us apart in the industry.
That's really cool. Ethics before quality, before profits. Very cool. I just wrote down. It's solid.
Yeah. That's a fun one. It's definitely turned into, it started off as kind of a slogan for us to live by, and it's turned into, we don't deviate. We don't pivot from this. That's pretty much where we stick. So it's fun. And part of that too is becoming a guide, as opposed to a salesperson. I think a lot of times when you get into, jewelry stores in general now, the job of a salesperson is kind of historically in our industry, they get you to either buy something or put money down on something before you even walk out the door, and not a single sale made that way is in the consumer's best interest. And so, I think a guide is going to walk with you on the journey. They're going to listen to you. They're going to provide advice and ensure that you have the best options presented, not only for your budget, but, kind of for your lifestyle as well. If you're extremely active, there may be some things that don't, jive with how you're going to end up wearing your jewelry and things like that. So, the thing for us is I want you to actually not put any money down. Go home. If you're pumped about it the next day, then, if you're excited, let's talk about it and go from there. If you wake up and have a gut check somewhere, we need to figure out where the issue is and then address it before moving forward.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing all that stuff. And so that leads me to my next question about kind of the business model and the customer experience. So are you guys brick and mortar? Is everything kind of by appointment only? Is it you got a team? Kind of just give me a couple minutes just to run down on how it works.
Yeah. So, I don't know anybody else that's kind of doing what I'm doing now. So I decided to kind of deconstruct what I knew of the industry, what did work, what didn't work, when I was actually consulting for one of these companies. So I've consulted for of the world's largest kind of international diamond and gemstone brokerage firms. One I was the lead GG of in the US, and then the other one I consulted for kind of globally. So, on that realm, while I was in that piece, I was thinking about, my own business. I had a lot of clients that were coming back to me saying, hey, we don't trust anybody else. Can you please make our jewelry, whatever else? And obviously you wanted to do that above board so that Uncle Sam can get his take. But, in constructing the business and kind of the business plan, a lot of it was, there's a lot of fluff in the industry that we don't need. We don't need higher overhead. We don't need a lot of different things there. It doesn't, especially the way that everybody's going custom now. If they walk into your store, they see that you have, say, an oval sapphire and a solitaire pendant, right? It's like, oh, I love that. I love the color. I love that, but I don't want the oval. I want it to be pear-shaped, and then I want to add diamonds on the side. So everybody's into this customization piece. So having a lot of stale inventory doesn't do anybody any good. And so kind of doing away with a lot of the stale inventory piece. I don't carry a lot of stuff, and I haven't. But to answer your question kind of a roundabout way, moving from kind of what I'm doing now, which I was doing most everything out of my house because I was working from home. But I'm actually opening up a location in downtown Charlotte in March. And so kind of pivoting out. And then what we're doing in that location is primarily by appointment only, but my doors aren't going to be closed. So if somebody's coming in, as long as they don't have an appointment, if you're coming in, you want to drop off a repair, if you wanted to ask a question, if you wanted to sit down and talk diamonds or, have a cup of coffee, that's fine. You can come in anytime you want to. But from that perspective, we're doing things a little bit differently in the sales side. A lot of it is kind of utilizing virtual inventory like everybody else is doing. With the price of diamonds being all over the board, it's not in a business owner's best interest right now to have $2 million of inventory just kind of sitting there. I know I had one previous client as of 6 months ago. They had $3.5 million of diamond inventory, and about 94% of that was overpriced. And it was because they bought, before everything tanked. When lab diamonds were coming in, they held on it, thinking it was going to go back up, and it's just essentially gone back to, diamond pricing right now is kind of what we saw back in 2008. So, that's one of those really difficult situations where do you try to offload some of that inventory and get some money back into your working capital, or do you sit on it and hope that it comes back in 5 or 10 years? So, a lot of things to think about there, but that's one of the things I was trying to do away with when I'm doing my store here.
Dude, it's a big inventory cash flow. Man, you made a really good point. Things are changing for sure. We do a lot of brick and mortar, and we definitely keep the doors open, but I definitely agree with you on efficient business models and what makes the most sense, and kind of doing everything backwards, but it's making perfect sense. And that kind of seems to be the formula that works in times of innovation. Seems like people you have to do that to win. So, so it sounds like, okay, you are opening like a small brick and mortar, not necessarily going to be massive.
No, I mean, the whole space is about 750 square feet. And I'm building out half of it up front because kind of the location that I'm in, we just don't know what's going to happen. Right. So, it's in the Wargo building uptown. So essentially you've got the light rail, which is kind of like the T or the site or anything like that in some of the bigger metropolitan areas, but it actually stops right at that building. So I've got 5,000 to 10,000 people walking by my doors every week. So I don't know if that's going to turn into, I have to end up opening up kind of a retail showroom side, or if I'm just going to expand out and hire somebody else and open up another office and kind of go that direction. So trying to play it as smart as I can in the sense that I don't want to go out there and upfit everything and then end up having to pivot and redo everything, 6 months to a year and a half down the line. So just trying to keep the options open as far as the second half of the store is concerned. But, as far as the private jeweler side, that's really where we're seeing the biggest boom right now. And I think a lot of, I've heard some of your other podcasts as well, but a lot of people have talked about kind of where brands are coming into play. So your Cartier, your Prada, your any of these major that are selling jewelry. And I think a lot of it comes down to the perceived value from the client, and they're especially in economic hardship, right? Which we've had a rough go for the past couple of years, just in an economic side of things. But, two things happen in a crazy bad economy, right? So everybody kind of huddles down and hunkers down and they try to pivot and shuffle and do everything they can on the business side, which is one thing. But on the consumer side, what we saw back in 2020, I'm glad I'm not in charge of anybody's portfolio. I'll put it that way. Because I was saying, retail goods and housing are probably going to be the first two things to crash. Or luxury goods rather, not retail, but everything went through the roof. In fact, actually the entire year of 2020, I don't think I sold a stone under 2 carats. So, and that was all natural. That was back when I wasn't even selling lab yet. So, getting into those two categories, it's like seeing people say, hey, we can't take a vacation this year, or what, it's our 30th anniversary, or, hey, the world looks like it's ending. Why don't we just go ahead and get married? Heard that a lot too. Mm-hmm. So, it's interesting to see kind of the dynamic and what people's minds are doing in certain areas like that. But then knowing that we have kind of this economic downturn and people have more, and I should say, thankfully, better priorities than just buying jewelry, but, more into the family, more into kind of trying to figure out their long-term goals, long-term investments. But, that's where I'm starting to see a lot of these larger brands. They're losing, money quarter over quarter. We've seen 1,200 jewelers close in the past 6 months. And that's really kind of the tip of the iceberg, I think. And I think a lot of that comes down to, are you putting in the smartest places, and coming into marketing and advertising? That's one of those things where, do you want to buy a quarter page ad in a magazine like our local magazines? Yeah, you can get in them, but you're going to get lost in 58 pages of ads in one story, right? So is it worth doing that, or is it worth doing more of a grassroots effort?
The way the world works now is there's so much data, information, intel, AI. Anybody can have anybody come to them. Like, of course, obviously I'm an advertising person and all that type of stuff, but the idea is to have them come to you because you've given them an offer during the time that they're an army of shoppers. Um, I worked for 3 publicly traded companies by the time I was 23. And the third
That's awesome.
was a publicly traded company it was called Belo. It owned all these TV stations. So essentially I worked for CBS. And I would sell traditional advertising, TV, and on the side, I'm seeing my dad, who's an immigrant, working his tail off. And my managers would just have me sell whatever. And I'm like, this is going to put this guy out of business. Like, I hope you know that. Like, and I stopped 2009, quit work for CBS, started Yummy Marketing, walked out, went on a vacation for like 3 weeks to Dubai with my best friend. His name is Michael Johnson. You've probably seen him fight. He just knocked a dude out. And him, my older brother, Mike Haddad, owns the Diamond family, and a guy named Sharif went out to Dubai, had a great time. I was really young at that time. Came back, signed a huge agency contract, and hired my boss. He was pissed. This kind of goes back to, you just got to do whatever's working at the time. And I just didn't feel comfortable selling people stuff that didn't work. Why wouldn't I just sell everything and be able to do a good job? So that's kind of how all that started. But yeah, I definitely understand that there is a big difference in the way that we're advertising, bringing in business, and you can really, really lose your stuff if you don't know what you're doing there. But if you do,
Yeah.
It's a cheat code.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people, and we had mentioned this before we jumped on, but I think, talking about the state of the jewelry industry as a whole, we're in a really interesting time because even back in 2018, right? So, lab grown diamonds have been available since probably the 60s, and then Yehuda pioneered a lot of things in the 80s. And then they really didn't become extremely popular in the public 2018. And even then, it took another 2 years really for the prices to start to fall. Because the first time in 2018, I was getting phone calls and it's like, hey, lab grown, we got these great prices. It's 75% of natural. And you think to yourself, yeah, okay, that's actually pretty good. All things considered, it's a great value. But then you look at that same stone now, and it's $45,000 back then, and now it's $1,200. So, we are in this like hyper tech driven side of things where our industry as a whole has been dinosaurs for eons. We haven't taken these technological revolutions. We haven't taken the advancements. We've been working on Mazal, which I think is actually an endearing part of our business as well. It's one of those things like you work on a handshake. If I know that if I screw you over, I've also screwed over all the people that you work with. And so you get essentially blackballed, in this industry for things like that. So I love that aspect of it, right? It's definitely more accountability on your word and on you as a human than on anything else. But we are making these big strides in the tech, advancements. And I don't know that our industry is really capable of making the leaps as a general rule. I think it's going to be very, very competitive, and it's going to be very difficult for a lot of people. Even from 2018 to now, you look at ChatGPT, OpenAI, Leonardo, all these different software tools that we have at our fingertips to be able to create, and help design and help put some ideas on paper. But you've got a younger generation that's, jumping onto those and utilizing those. And then you have an older generation that's like, I'm not going to do it. And then 5 years down the line, when they realize that it's going to be a necessity in their industry, now they're so far behind the curve that it's going to be really difficult for them to catch up in any way, shape, or form. So, that in and of itself, plus we're dealing with the economic side of things and, how people are perceiving the jewelry industry, how they're perceiving lab grown versus natural. There are a lot of different things that we're having to mitigate and conversations that we're having to have that we haven't had to have before. So I think it's a really interesting time to be in the industry.
You said a lot of things there. Well, there's the lab grounds, there's the technology from the business standpoint. If people thought that the last one moved fast, this is going to be about 100 years of growth in 36 months. Start seeing some very aggressive AI integrations, AI technologies, AI employees are being released now. So I think you're 100% right there. And then there's also the design part of it, where a lot of bespoke people like, yourself, you really know what you're doing. You're a GAA guy, you're a craftsman. Uh, People are liking the design side of things because you can go and have somebody, tell you what you want and then go make it. A lot of people are like, that's never going to work. I'm creating my custom. And then there's the that everybody needs, which is just the systems you mentioned. Okay. Business operations, training. Like I'm not a shoemaker, but I could literally put on the most amazing shoemaker how to make shoes course with my AI clone and never leave my bed. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so it's going to be super interesting to see how it goes. You did mention a couple cool things that I did want to touch on. You're definitely a little bit more forward thinking. You're using technology. You're solving the inventory problem a little bit here. So I'd like to know a little bit about. I probably have maybe 2, 3 more questions if that's okay with you. The
Yeah.
first one is how do you business? How do you bring in the business, and are you looking to that business? Like, what's the future? So those two real quick.
Yeah. So on the marketing piece, you're right. That is a evolving part of our business. And I think, we've pivoted from doing more of your traditional, quarter page, half page ad magazine. Those are notoriously hard to track. Yes, I get it. You're putting your name out there, but we haven't found that's not what my money, to answer a part of that question. And then kind of the secondary piece before I move into more detail on that one. Most of our business, I've got about 80% of my business is coming from out of state. And I'd say about overall 95% of my business is referral. And it's really interesting to even dive into those, kind of seeing what we're doing outside, which I'm not really doing anything on the national circuit, but we're getting most of our business in that way. And it's just because of a sheer volume of kind of what we're doing there. And, thankfully I'm blessed with a lot of great clients. So
those are all just people you knew from back in the day and you just got that right.
Some of them, yes, some of them no. Like I actually, oddly enough, I jumped on Reddit one day because I kept getting a lot of people, younger clients coming in saying, hey, I got this and this. And I'm like, that's totally wrong information. Like, where are you getting this from? And of course they said, hey, we've been on some of the forums on Reddit, which there are some great people on there. I spoke with the owner of White Flash and, a couple of people that I actually used to sell diamonds to are on there. So, in that sense, those guys I highly regard. But there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of opinion being touted as fact on there as well. And so being able to go in to say, hey, look, I'm not here to make sales. I'm just here to set the record straight. And this is actually why this happens. And this is what happens. And this is true, not true, whatever else, to try and at least, further the knowledge section of the community. And from that, I actually got a ton of business and then got a ton of repeat business from that as well. So it was something that I put my foot in that I didn't look for anything coming out of it, but it's turned into a substantial piece of our business. But the funny thing is, a lot of that, I still sell a lot of here in Charlotte as well. And of course on the East Coast as well. But, looking at kind of the marketing local versus the marketing on a national scale, I feel like I'm not really going to do anything on the national scale because that's too much of a thing to chew off. But, in reference in regards to what I'm doing here in the store. So once the store's open in March, I think I'm going to give myself a month or two just to kind of get the lay of the land, see what's going on. But, I think we're probably going to throw a fair amount of marketing into like the geolocation marketing and things like that, where you get, a fair amount of return, over the course of 30 days and a lot of views and things like that if they're in the area. And then kind of pinpointing as far as, zip codes and certain demographics that we want to go after. Beyond that though, like I am not a marketing guru. I'm a diamond guy. I'm a diamond and gemstone guru. I will take that all day long, and food and booze, right? I can talk about all four of those, but marketing is not my strong suit. And so I think, for us, a lot of that is going to be trying to find the right person that catches the kind of the pillars of what we stand for and the message that we want to convey and put that out there. And I think that's going to help us hit our target market. But a lot of it too, I love the grassroots stuff. My favorite thing the other day was, I saw I have hats, right? That's one of the things, got our logo on the front of it, and always gets compliments randomly, no matter where we go. So I was like, well, let's just pop it on some merch and throw it out there and see what happens. But seeing somebody that I didn't even know wearing my hat the other day was pretty cool. So I popped up to him and said, hey, where'd you get that from? So, that kind of stuff is a lot of fun to see. So there's some on that side. It's a fun piece. People enjoy it. But, the grassroots thing for me is really, really, really prominent is what I want to do this year, whether it's, sponsoring. I got 3 kids, right? So, they get into sports, sponsoring their sports, doing the jerseys, things that parents are going to be seeing every day, or every weekend or whatever it is. Doing a lot of things like that are hyper local. And then, of course, working with a couple of companies and charities and things like that. Just, from our perspective, we love the arts. And so we try to support them where we can too. So, I think that's going to be our thrust, but that's going to be an easy pivot. If something doesn't work or, if we see a better avenue that we're going to get, more kind of return on investment, then we'll do that too.
It's always a combo, Number one, jewelers are family people. We deal with people. You got a jeweler. You like the guy. You trust the guy.
Everybody's got a family jeweler, right?
Like you said, a handshake business. That is an amazing thing. But if you pair it with strong digital marketing, you have a legacy, you have an engine it just keeps coming. And I think pairing those two things well with expertise that you have, you're going to be just fine, man. You're going to be just fine. And I'll have a call after and give you some goodies and some stuff and a relationship. And I'll share some of it.
Yeah, absolutely
worked for us and a lot of other people. At this point, we're taking in a lot of information from jewelers all over the country. And it's really cool. I mean, some of the things these people have done, from tragic incidents that have happened, that they've turned into these amazing events that, one of them, he gets 300 new customers every year from the event, guaranteed.
That's awesome.
So a little combination of both those things. And so I love talking to you about that. And I think you're on the right track for sure. I'll have 2 more for you, and then we'll jump it. The one question that I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you're using some AI software, maybe for inventory or something like that. What kind of AI are you? What AI platforms are you?
Yeah. So one of the companies that I consulted with, the company's called Unbridled.ai. So they're a diamond platform similar to, RapNet, Polygon, IDEX, Navoda, kind of the major platforms out there. VDB is another one. Unbridled.ai. Okay. Yeah. They're for the jewelers out there that are already using some of these platforms. If you're not using them, shameless plug. They're great guys to work with. But the one cool tool that they have is a proprietary AI that they developed. So Vikas and Tim are the 2 owners. They developed this program that essentially takes, data points, supplier information, it counterweights and balances for the stones themselves. There's like 40 to 60 data points that it looks at. And then you can look through almost 1 million stones or just over 1 million stones in under a second. And that's really how we start our search, right? Because we're looking globally anyway. And so if we put in these certain parameters and that's what we're going after, it's going to start choosing some of the best stones out of the bunch. So, a lot of these platforms, if you're looking at like Navoda and RapNet as an example, so 2 of the more popular, if you're on these systems and you're searching for stones, you may have to scroll through 600-700 stones, 800 stones, right, in order to be able to find the best ones, because a lot of them are sorted by price or size. So that's not necessarily going to be the values that I'm going after. And so that's a really great tool to kind of utilize in front of your clients. You can show them your markups. You can show, kind of the stones, the videos, pull those up. You can change the size and whatever else. So it's a great tool if you're sitting down with clients in a one-on-one setting. Probably won't work as well with counter sales, although I'm sure you could probably figure out how to do that. But that's one of the programs that we use. I actually utilize the ones that I mentioned before, OpenAI, Leonardo, Midjourney. I mean, all the major ones there as well. And that's not necessarily, I know a lot of people are using those, they're developing kind of their own AI pictures and then they're putting them on their website as things that they've made. We originally did that, not what we made, but just more as kind of a design style on our Instagram. But I pivoted away from that pretty quickly because it's not really, the same thing that we're going to have issues with CAD designs and things like that with AI. Some of these things may not be durable. I mean, we're facing a rash of CAD designers that did really great CAD designs in other fields, and they're coming into this field. It's not structurally sound for a lot of jewelry. So I think that's going to be one major hurdle that we have. But, as far as all the AI is concerned, I think I use about 8 different programs right now. And some of that is, design phase. Some of those programs are far more realistic on certain things. Some of them are better at certain things. So you really have to kind of figure out which of those programs is going to work best for you as well. And then figuring out how to do your prompts. I mean, there are a lot of different ways to do prompts, and there are a lot of different things that you're going to get. But, getting good with prompts, getting good with in painting, and then really being able to use Photoshop to be able to take some of the pieces that you made and put these on AI models. You can save yourself a ton of money that way as well. So there's.
Hey, you're talking. Hey, I've interviewed a lot of people on here. A lot of people say prompts and then any of that. So, dude, you're on your way, dude. I can't wait.
I love jumping into it, even if it doesn't really come to massive fruition, which I think it will in our industry long term. And there's also a time and a place. I think you can easily have too much AI. It becomes too clinical and too kind of emotionally lacking in some cases. So there's a time and a place for it, but it's really great as far as a kind of a tool when you're sitting down and guiding people kind of along the entire, especially the engagement ring journey, right? Or if I do a ton of lapel pins as well, which is one of my favorite things right now. I hope that takes off and blows up again. I think we've been wearing gym clothes to the office for long. It's nice to actually throw on a nice jacket and lapel pin and do it up a little bit. So it's cool to be able to come up with it that way and then take that to the CAD team and then really kind of design something really special.
Yeah, man. I feel like you got something really cool here. I think you're a great CEO who's got a lot of tradition meeting technology at the same time. And, I'll ask my final question. Just if anybody wants to get a hold of you, where to find you, if there's anything, one piece of advice you'd like to share with the community, but ultimately just, put yourself out there and, you're great at what you do. If people want to get a hold of you, let's let them find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you can call me. I got my office number is 980-259-9485. You can text, you can call, you can email me at justin@hourglassdiamonds.com. Everything comes to me directly anyway. I like to have a hand in absolutely everything that we touch. As far as, a piece of advice, that could easily go through a whole host of things that I've learned over the years. But the top two, I would say, if you're going to do something, do it right the first time, and you're going to save yourself a lot of headache down the line. The second piece to that is kind of, when I've consulted for a lot of these sales teams, the big thing is when you're talking about providing value for somebody, price is very different than value, right? So value is the perception that what you're paying for is worth it in your eyes, right? So if I'm providing enough value to my potential clients, they'll buy. So if I lose a sale, that is 1,000% on me. That's not on anybody else. And that really just boils down to, I didn't provide enough value for that client. And so a lot of times if there's a sale that's missed, and obviously there are things that are outside of our circumstances, but the ones that are in control of our circumstances, those are the cases that we dive into and we sit down and say, okay, now what could we have done a little bit differently in order to provide more value for the client here? It's never a, hey, you lost the sale or you did a bad job or whatever else. Like where did we not provide enough value? What could we have done differently? And I think that's one of the biggest things as a business owner going into it. Whether you've got AEs or SDRs or you're in the tech space or you're in hospitality or wherever else, where really can we provide value in the small things where people else are, where other competitors are kind of falling flat in that area.
That's super solid advice. It's just been a pleasure to meet you, Justin, honestly.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show.
Guys, if you need him, again, I showed the website, Hourglass Diamonds, Justin Smith. Look forward to talking to you again and watching you kick butt, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, look forward to it. Looking forward to seeing all the other people you have on the show too. It's fun.
A lot of great things coming to everyone in this community. And we're going to grow together and support each other through the quick list we're going through right here. So again, thank you so much, Justin.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to talking to you. And thank you everybody for listening. Have a great day and take care, guys.
See ya. Thanks.